This is Haide Giesbrecht of Encouragement Along the Journey. This episode of the Encouragement Along the Journey podcast is a rebroadcast of a conversation originally recorded for Ellen Newhouse's podcast, The Undoing: Coming Home to Yourself and Your Creativity. In this episode, Ellen welcomes Haide Giesbrecht for a thoughtful conversation about creativity, identity, and the journey of becoming more fully ourselves.
As you know, I'm Ellen Newhouse. I'm the host of The Undoing: Coming Home to Yourself and Your Creativity. And I am so excited about today because my guest, when I just connected with her, I felt at home. So this is Haide Giesbrecht, and she is a therapist, a writer, a mom to 4 adult children who are all autistic and doing well. And I want to say that because, part of the show is undoing all the things that we believe in or all the things that our culture tells us. And I really want to talk today, Haide, amongst other things, about what it means to have 4 kids who are on the spectrum. And I'm so glad they're doing well. But before we get into it, I want to say one thing. If you guys who are here have questions, please put it in the little message box and we will try to answer the questions. And as you know, at the end of the show, I will do a sound healing as always. So let's just say welcome to the people that are here. Oh my goodness. Hello, hello, hello. And so I think we're just going to jump in. I want to know something because, as you know from today's post and yesterday's post, I'm focused on trust this week. So when you had these children, did you know in the very beginning that they were having issues?
Well, that's kind of an interesting one because at the very beginning, my husband and I thought that we were having issues. We spent probably the first 3.5 years of our kids' lives thinking that we shouldn't have had kids, that we were horrible parents, that everybody else seemed to be managing this parenting thing reasonably well, and we were not coping. And so my thing has always been, if something's going wrong, it must be me. It must be my fault. And so it took us a while to figure out that, you know what? Wait a minute. Actually, it was when our third was born, and he was just really calm in comparison. And at that point, we thought, oh, this is what kids are supposed to be like. But we realized that when kids fall and hurt themselves, they're actually supposed to cry. So he was just kind of the opposite end of the spectrum in a lot of ways. But at that point, a supervisor of mine had given me a book called Raising Your Spirited Child by Mary Kersinka.
Oh, yeah.
Such an amazing book. It was a lifesaver because that was when we went, wait a minute, this might not be just about us. This might actually be about something that's going on with the kids. And we just, they were just lovely, intense, determined little human beings. And yeah, so we actually knew that we were having problems. And it took a while for us to realize, oh, there is something bigger going on here. Yeah.
So did any of the kids get diagnosed before you had the 4th one?
No.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so they're all 20 months apart. So like our oldest and our youngest actually share a birthday. So we always joke and say there are twins born 5 years and 32 minutes apart. So they were, I guess my oldest was the first diagnosis, even though they weren't the first assessment. The first assessment was, oh, there's symptoms of anxiety. This is a kid who had not symptoms like significant anxiety. And, there it was talking about learning and unlearning and boxes that we put people in. The first assessment asked questions like, does your child have any odd or unusual behaviors? And I said, oh, yes. Okay. So when she gets really upset, she throws herself down on the floor on her back and spins herself around, kicking and screaming. And she was like 9 at this point. And the assessor said, oh, no, no, no. That's not what I mean. I mean, does she flap her hands? And I said, no. Okay, no odd or unusual behaviors. And I was like, but what
Wait
about
a minute.
this? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute.
So, yeah, so we walked away from that with basically no answers, but we
Mhm.
had lots of questions because doing all the questionnaires, we started thinking about our other kids and going, ooh, actually, our
Mm.
oldest. And so our oldest actually was the first diagnosis at age 12. And then our son, who is third, was next, and he was 9 at the time. And then our our fourth had been sent through the public system here, and
Mhm.
it ended up being a really horrible experience, and I was really thankful that it was me, not somebody else, because we already had a really good team, and we already had come to the point of recognizing, "Wait a minute, we're actually doing a lot of things right as parents." But the assessment essentially came out saying we were horrible parents, and that if we would just be a little stricter with our kids, that we wouldn't have these
Oh, no.
behavioral problems. And the recommendation was to take some parenting classes that I actually teach my clients.
Oh,
And so,
God.
yeah, the professionals who were already working with our family were horrified. And so they actually encouraged me to write a letter to send to the hospital and request that it be attached to the file, and that time anyone pulls that assessment, that my letter go with it.
I
So,
mean, what I was feeling before you finished your sentence, I was like,
yeah.
were they recommending to take those kids away from you?
No, no, they weren't.
Good.
They were recommending that, yeah, no, they were recommending parenting classes and just, a whole bunch of behavioralist strategies, which was not actually how we were parenting. We were parenting in a relational way. And in the end, looking back, we had already found so many of the strategies that worked for our kids. And so in some ways, it made the assessment harder because our kids were actually, like, yes, they were struggling, but they were also doing well because they had supports and things in place already. So yeah, so then my third, the one who had the first assessment, was also diagnosed when she was around 11, 12. And then at that point, we did a reassessment of my youngest. Yeah, uh, there was some things that happened in the assessment where the second psychologist could look at it and say, this person says that they've done this assessment, but they did it in 15 minutes, and this assessment should take 3 hours. So I don't think they did it. And so as a result of that, yeah, we were able to have it redone fairly quickly afterwards. And so our youngest at age 9 also had the diagnosis.
Imagine. I mean, you were a therapist. Can you imagine if you were somebody who had no knowledge of any of this? I mean, thank God you came to
Yeah,
this. Now, I do have a
yeah,
question because all week I've been, sitting with this burning issue about trust. So,
yeah.
when all the kids were diagnosed, did you look up at God and say, like, what the heck? I mean, did you feel like,
You know what?
did,
It's funny. I don't know if I just have different reactions than people. That never crossed my mind because so our first was I was pregnant when I was 29 with our first, and then 34 with our last. And so I was kind of in the ages of, higher incidence of challenges. We'd also had infertility struggles along the way. And so when we went through the whole process and we found out we were pregnant, of course, they offered to do all sorts of screening. And we were like, we don't want to do the screening. Like, whatever happens, happens. Like, whoever our child is, whatever they bring with them, we will figure it out together and it wouldn't change our mind anyways. And mm, so when they were born, we just saw them as this unique little human. And I mean, the cool thing with kids is I find you see their personality so early.
isn't it shocking? I mean,
It's insane.
it's shocking. I mean, I, in my professional career, assisted in 5 births because I was I was questioning whether I wanted it at some point. I was sitting with the question of should I become, because all I was doing was infertility with women. And then ultimately they were like, Ellen, you have to be at my birth. And I was like, well, and then I wondered if I should, go on and be, become a, my gosh, I can't think of the name of it
Midwife?
right now. Thank you. Yes, become a midwife. And after the 5 births, it was answered for me because I do not do well with without a great sleep. And you don't get a lot of sleep as, when you're on call. And I was like, whoa, these people are up all hours of the night. And as beautiful it was. I mean, it was after going through these 5 births, I was like, how could anybody birth a child and not believe in God? It was so spiritual for me. I was the one always crying when the babies were born. The moms were just exhausted, by the time
Aw.
and they were happy, but they were so exhausted. But my answer was yes, as soon as those babies come out, they come with their whole personality.
It's amazing. I remember my oldest was the one that is like most like the memory is just so detailed. And it was we were in our room, and our oldest had to go for all sorts of tests and all the rest because we'd had a very difficult labor that ended in an emergency C-section. And so I'm back in the room and I'm holding my oldest, and we're talking like maybe 8 or 10 hours old. And my doctor comes in, and I've got, baby here. I'm trying to burp baby, and baby's head lifts up and turns around and looks and then flops back down. And I'm like, and my doctor is standing right there, and I'm like, is this normal for babies to do? And she says, no, not usually. And
Usually,
And so we laughed and we're like, ha ha, our child is just stiff-necked from the get-go. Well, let me tell you, our oldest is one determined human being. And so we were like, oh, that actually felt like personality. This was the child who, in the baby carriers, some of the babies love being snuggled. Mine did not. Mine wanted to be facing forward at all times. So like the things that we came up with, we'd use like the baby swing, but
okay. Yeah.
and the jolly jumper that you like clip in the door. I don't know if you remember that. We had the duck version. And so we would sit my oldest in there, and we would take like blankets and wedge them around, because even though baby technically was not yet at an age where they could be sitting by themselves, did not want to be reclined, wanted to be like this, seeing the world. And so, yeah, so we got really creative and like suctioned the bath ring to the coffee table, and whatever we could do to like let baby see the world. And it's like, yep, that is very much this kid's personality, like determined, curious, wants to know everything, always listening, always observing. So it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Now that's really interesting. And first of all, these children are so blessed. My goodness. I
Mm,
mean, what beautiful parenting. I mean,
mm,
I've been around a lot of parents, and trust me, not everybody is so thoughtful and intuitive. And
mm,
wow, beautiful. So let me ask you
yeah.
this, because I think when people hear the diagnosis autistic, there's immediate ideas about what that means, and what you're describing about a child who's so, curious and wants to know the world is the antithesis, I think, of
Mm,
what a lot of people think about. So what are some of the gifts that you have learned from these kids? And what would you say, to people whose child may get a diagnosis and may be frightened to death for their life?
Well, the first thing is, and people will maybe have heard this before, you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Like,
Yeah.
there is no one size fits all. And frankly, like when a friend of mine who is a social worker by training was the first one who kind of pegged what might be going on. And we'd been sent for just like a psych eval for school. And the person doing the assessment was insistent that we needed to go on and get another assessment done. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you trying to tell me? And she didn't want to say, I'm not qualified to diagnose. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't want to diagnose this. I just want to know, like, what are you trying to tell me that I'm missing? Because I'm missing something between the lines here. And that's when she said, I think your child might be autistic. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And so I mentioned this to my friend, and she said, well, Heidi, you've got one specific picture of autistic in your mind, and that's not what your kids look like, or that's not what your child looks like, is what she started with. And she said, you've got to remember, and this was kind of in the days before we had the big umbrella that covers a whole bunch of things. And she says, there's like, a PDD NOS, pervasive developmental delay, not otherwise specified. So that was one. And she listed off a few others and then said, and Asperger's. And I was like, funny, you should say that. And she's like, oh, why? And I said, well, when my husband and I were first married and we went to see our first marriage therapist, he asked us if, Rich had ever been diagnosed with Asperger's. And I was like, can't believe he would say that. And she had this weird look on her face. And I'm like, Renee, what's going on? And she's like, and I'm like, okay, just say
Yeah.
it. And she says, I can't help but say that I haven't thought that myself. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, so you think like my second and my husband are both like autistic? And she's like, yeah, and maybe others. And I'm like,
God.
okay, who else? And she's like, I don't want to say it. And I'm like, no, you cannot not say anything now. Now I've got to know. So finally, by the end of the conversation, she had basically said, I think your oldest and your son are Asperger's, and I think your second and your youngest are likely PDD NOS, pervasive developmental delays. And I was like, what? And I was just like, I'm a therapist. Like, how can I have missed that my husband and my entire family is on the spectrum? Like, how? I mean, I know that I wasn't specially trained in school around assessment, but how could I have missed it? And she just said, well, Heidi, this is your normal. And I'm like, oh yeah. Yeah, you're right. It is my normal. So how would I know that this isn't everybody's normal? I just assumed this is how everybody experienced life.
Wait a minute. So wait a minute. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna but you didn't come from a family with Asperger's or
No,
autism. So
no.
what did she mean by this was your normal?
Well, so I grew up in a family of 3, but my brothers were 11 and 13 years older than me. So I
Oh,
pretty
wow.
much grew up as an only. So I
Oh,
had no concept of what sibling relationships really looked like in real life. And my normal was my partner. And then when our kids were born, they were just like him. And so, that must be the way it is, right?
yeah.
So, yeah, so it was the normal. Your question of like, are there things that I've learned? Absolutely. And I ended up doing a series of 3 posts because I write about everything. It's like,
Right.
you know, it's
Yeah,
a
I
little bit
do
of a
know.
problem. I
Yeah.
know you do.
No,
Yeah.
it's not a problem. It is not a problem. Yeah.
It's
No.
an enjoyable problem. It's a very enjoyable problem. Yes.
I want to say something about that because I read a post of yours earlier that talked about that. And in this day and age, I know everybody wants to pigeonhole, blah, 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 blah. But you know what? I don't think that's normal. I'm sorry. I mean, I really don't, because most of us humans are eclectic. We're multifaceted. We're amazing. And this whole like niche down, niche down, niche down, like I understand those words. And yet I fight it every day because it's like, well, but is this really what we want to be encouraging in the world? You and I are going to talk about the educational system because of your experience and my experience. But, I feel like the niching down solution is like teaching people just to, take a test that says yes or no, black or white. And it's
I
not critical thinking.
Yeah. I think the challenge is that as humans, we're often very good at putting things in boxes. And so part of the challenge is a lot of people maybe are more generalist. And then there are some people who really do have a niche. And I think they're beautiful, but that's not me.
Right. If you
Um,
happen to be that person who has
right.
one very specific lane, great. But I don't know, this
Yeah.
drive to niche down,
Yeah.
I feel like it is about dumbing down. Sorry. I mean, sorry, not sorry, because I feel like I want people to know me, right?
Yeah.
As they want to know you. And if I am really multifaceted, I can't help myself. Like I put a postcard up, that that I was laughing about because a while ago I was taking a course on Instagram and I just love, well, I care deeply about our country. I am deeply, deeply concerned about our country. And I can't help myself. There are moments when I'm just like, huh? So I posted that postcard that said, bombing for peace is like fucking for Virginia.
I saw that. Yeah.
I thought, now that's hysterical. I mean, and it's an important message, right? But does that have anything to do with my music? Maybe. Maybe it does. Does that have something to do with healing? Absolutely, it does. But I think sometimes, this other woman I studied with, she's like, Ellen, please don't say anything about your political point of view. And I just was like, I'm so sorry. I cannot help myself. Yeah, no. She was really adamant that I be very, just one lane. And I just can't help myself. So I really want to address the misunderstanding before we move on from this, because I'm concerned for people. There's a lot of diagnosing today, which is good and bad. And I've worked with a lot of women whose children get diagnosed and it sends them into a tailspin. Like they're never going to get on their own. They're never going to do this. They're never going to, and the grief. So it does not sound like your children are sitting around doing nothing. So what are the misunderstandings that you have come through about children? And again, your children are different than anybody else's children, but what could you help people with?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because people will ask, like, was it grief for you? And again, I think I'm a little unique, weird. I'm not sure. It was actually relief because finally we had an understanding of what was going on. But I think where I've often said, like, I am in a lot of ways, I think exactly who my kids needed as a mom, because I always see the best in people. I look for the best. I'm an optimist. I mean, my handle is called Encouragement Along the Journey. And it truly is like, it is how I try to live my life. And so for my kids, like, all I could see was who they were. And I always talked about, like, I don't care about working with professionals that are like specialized in autism. I wanted like somebody who could see my kid's heart. And so I never really had moments where I thought, oh my goodness, like they're never going to amount to anything or that kind of language. Like it was, I mean, I was pretty sure my second was never going to have a job, never going to be able to drive, because this was the kid that couldn't go to the washroom without me being in the room. We weren't allowed to close the door, like massive anxiety, couldn't talk to anybody, was always hiding behind me. And now this is my daughter who has started her own business. She trains service dogs. She works with a wide variety of clients. She's working full time. She's employing two others. She has a boyfriend. They've been dating for a number of years and are talking about, future planning. And so that holding hope for our kids is super, super important. And we were really fortunate in some of the people that we found who became part of our team and really part of our family. One of them was Elizabeth, who she's been on my podcast a couple of times. So if people are interested, dig through my podcast and you'll see some episodes with her. But one of the things that she always said to me was, Heidi, your kids are smart and they will get there. I know you can't see it yet, but I know they will get there. And so I hung on to those words and I believe them. Like it's got to be because Elizabeth has told me this and she knows her area. And so I would hang on to that. And then I think a big part of it is as parents really believing the best about our kids, like trusting that they are exactly who they need to be. And some kids have significant challenges, but I think one of my biggest pet peeves is the whole labeling system that we have for some of the developmental diagnoses. Autism is one great example where there's different levels. Well, the challenge is that if someone gets labeled with the level that says, "Oh, we don't see the autism; they look normal," we totally minimize their challenges. And if they get labeled, and it's usually if they're highly verbal, they
Mm.
are seen as very competent, and all the other stuff is not seen. And then it's often when they're nonverbal, or maybe especially when they're nonverbal, I think a lot of times kids get seen for less than what they are, rather than saying, yeah, you know what, their challenge is speech, rather than, oh, well, therefore. And so I think the best thing I could say to parents is see your kid's heart and trust that they can grow and they can go further than you could imagine. Because I can say that all of my kids are doing things now that I some of them I just could not have seen that this is where they would end up. Does that mean they don't have challenges? No. And I mean, currently, I would say probably two, maybe three of mine are underemployed. And that is a challenge. But we have worked to help them get some supports in place so that they can navigate well. And I keep thinking they're only 21 to 26. And the
Right.
thing Elizabeth kept saying is don't expect your kids to be doing at 16 what other kids are doing at 16. They might be 26 or 36, but they will get there. And so that's the piece I always hang on to.
And what it sounds like to me is that Elizabeth gave you trust.
Yes.
She gave you hope and she gave you trust. And, you know, it's like since I've been cogitating all week about the word trust, is that you had somebody you were able to trust and who had enough knowledge that she wasn't just, feeding you poppycock, but
Mm.
she had enough knowledge and enough belief in you and your husband
Yes.
and your kids that, she extended that trust to you in a way,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and it's interesting because that's what I was thinking of when you started talking about trust was what I said right at the very beginning when we started. And you said, like, what was it like for you? And did you recognize there was something going on with the kids? And I said to you, no, my husband and I spent 3.5 years thinking we were horrible parents and we should never have had kids. And I think, Elizabeth was one person, a good friend of mine who's also a therapist. And she doesn't have kids. So again, I was like, well, she doesn't have kids, so she doesn't
Right.
understand. But her words were, Heidi, your kids are so lucky to have you as their mom. And I was like, you don't know. But there were like these people in our life that as overwhelmed as we were with what was going on, and as much as we felt like, man, we have like nothing to offer here, they kept seeing the best in us and they kept believing in us. And that felt like an offer of trust. Like they trusted us even when we didn't trust ourselves. Like we were like, we don't know what we're doing. We're trying our best, but we can't have a simple drive home from a family gathering without having to pull over to the side of the road and have a big thing go on because our kids are so dysregulated. And so it having people that could see that for us, built that up for us so that we could also see it for our kids. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, I mean, we don't have enough time for me to tell you my vision or what I came through with parents, but
Mm.
listening to you talk, Heidi, I mean, what a gorgeous parent and mother you are. And I know that I feel strongly that you extend this to your patients and
Mm.
your clients, whatever you call them. And what a gift. I mean, what a gift. Even like, I don't know, I don't think we just texted, right? We just
Yeah,
texted, I
yeah,
think.
first in person, yeah.
I know. And even through the texting, the energy that I felt in you, the warmth and the sense of being embraced is like, I can't even tell you what a gift that is, that
Thank
you
you.
just hold that. So these children are so lucky to have you, and you're so lucky to have them as, your kids, because I am sure you could write a whole book about what you've
Yeah,
learned from their mom. Yeah.
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 Well, and I think
So,
your
okay.
your initial question about what did I learn from them, I'll give you, like, 3 really quick things that I learned from
Okay.
my kids and my husband. Because I think there's and people can go back and read the posts, they're called "If We're Willing," and one of them is just, like, it doesn't have to be scary to not see things the same way. It is
Okay. Can we
okay.
just pause that for a moment? Say that again. No, because that's so important. Say that again.
It doesn't have to be scary when you don't see things the same way.
And can you imagine if we extended that to our
Mm.
entire country right now? I mean, that just gave me
Yeah.
goose.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, go on. Go.
My kids are so like we always joke and say there first of all there are no secrets. Everybody knows everything about everything in our family and beyond because our kids would share all sorts of things. But like there is no lying. Like everyone just says it the way it is and it's not said in a mean way. So we had our kids were asked at one point, "Do you have family rules?" "Oh, yeah, we have family rules." "What are your family rules?" Well, our family rules are we treat each other with kindness and compassion. And so that was like our guiding principle. So like if you were going to say something, yes, be honest about it, but say it with kindness and compassion. And
Mm,
so, and then the other piece is because everybody in our house struggles to catch anything that is just implied. I had to learn to
mm,
be really direct, like really, and this was very much not how I was trained as a child because in my family, everything was very indirect. And so now here I am, and my husband's like, well, how was I supposed to know that? I'm not a mind reader. And I was like, well, but you should be. And so, yeah, learning to
So
just
it
like,
brought out this
yeah,
direct person
yeah.
in you. Wow.
And I'm
So
still gentle because that's me, but
yeah.
like if I need something, I need to ask for it clearly. I can't just hint and hope that someone will get the hint and then be upset when they didn't get it.
Mm.
So,
Well, I think all of these rules, if we all applied all of these rules, would make us all a lot healthier and a lot happier,
yeah.
frankly.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, and I
because
my partner and my kids have taught me a lot about relationship. And the funny thing is, of course, I came into the relationship thinking I was the one who had everything to teach. And so a little humility of realizing actually I have a lot to learn and it's a good thing. It's been a real gift. Yeah.
yeah. Well, any kids, I mean, diagnosis or not diagnosis, they teach us so much about ourselves. My goodness. I mean,
100%.
I Yeah, I mean, I chose at 7 years old not to have any biological children because I did not I knew at 7 that if unless I healed, that I would repeat what my parents had done, and I could not live with that. And so I thought I was scot-free, and then I met a man who had 2 children. The universe is hysterical, you know?
Oh my
Oh
goodness.
my God.
How old were they when they came into your life?
So they were 9 and 10, just turning 11 and 10. So turning 10 and 11. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And woo, what a ride it has been. And a therapist once looked at me knowing everything that I know because of the work I do. And he was like, what were you thinking? Especially because they're girls. I mean, this is the worst time. And I was like, well, love had a different idea. And
Yeah.
now, oh my God, now they are 35 and 34. And I love these girls and they love me. I mean, they are just like my heart, they're really my heart and soul. And
So that's so beautiful, Ellen. Like having made what must have been a really difficult decision to say, there's this part of my life I'm not even going to examine. Like I've decided
yeah,
and it's done. And
yeah,
then, like you said, the universe had different ideas, and these two beautiful humans get brought in. And yeah, like I can just see that they fill your heart.
they do. And it was not easy. I mean, trust me,
Oh,
it was a battle for about 12 years or more. Yeah, it was a battle. It was from many different levels. And the reason why I'm so touched is that I just had my birthday and they both sent me the most beautiful messages. And it they weren't just like, "Oh, happy birthday." It was thoughtful. It was like so incredibly thoughtful, and knowing where we've all come from to now, I mean, my heart, it just like, and my husband, Jim, kept saying, why do you think this birthday was so special? And I thought, I got those messages. Nothing else mattered.
Oh, that's
Nothing else. Yeah. So it's been a long, amazing journey, but boy, have they taught me about me, and not in an easy way. It was not easy. And luckily I had a therapist I could go to as many times a week as I needed to, because I grew up in an extremely violent family. And so you bring, I mean, all of these things that you don't even know that you're bringing. And, you're reacting to things. And so it was a wild ride, wild ride. But through it all, love absolutely led the way, even when we couldn't see it. I remember, I'll tell you a funny story.
Yeah.
So when the girls finally moved out, I always thought like Jim and I got along so, so well. But if we had arguments, it was always da 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 da, the girls. And then the girl, no, always. So I couldn't imagine that we would ever have an argument that didn't go, da da da, the girls. The girls moved out. And I remember the first argument we had that had nothing to do with the girls. I was like, what? Like, I was shocked, absolutely shocked. And luckily, we got through it, and it's been a wonderful relationship. But through it, boy, oh boy, did I have to trust, that we would make it through, because it was not easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in relationships, I think challenge us and grow us. Like I always say, each of us can do so much of our personal work, on our own when we're independent. And then if we get into a partnership of some sort, whether it's a dating relationship, a marriage, maybe a business partnership, somewhere where we are interacting very intentionally with another human being, it stretches us and it grows us. And then if kids get added into a mix, it doesn't make it easier. It makes it challenging and lots of opportunities for growth and richness, but it stretches us, right? So, and you've
Yes.
described that so beautifully. Yeah.
Yes, and humility. I laughed when you said, I thought I was the one, coming. I was very much like that. I had done 26 years of therapy by the time I had met Jim. Yeah, well, I
You
would
were
not. Well, yes, I was. I would not be here had I not done all of that therapy. So, basically, it was really survival, and in order to overcome a lot of the trauma and damage that I had lived through. And I'm just going to do this. And I never do this, but I feel compelled to do this because I do see a lot of people on Substack where they've lived through a lot of trauma. So you guys, I'm going to interrupt myself. If you ever want to know my full story, you can read my memoir. And I think it would be so helpful. And I leave it for like practically nothing on as an ebook on Amazon. So, and the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I do see a lot of trauma that people have gone through. So if you want to know how I got to be happy, you can read this.
okay.
Yeah.
And what's it called?
I'm sorry.
What's it called?
Thank you. It's called Nothing Ever Goes On Here. And I will put like some information about where you can find it when I do the show notes of this talk.
Perfect.
Thank you. Because I never talk about my book because I'm on to doing music right now, and I never think to talk about it. But, I want to be able to share how I got to here and continue. And, this week I posted about trust because I'm in a new level of looking at the issue of trust. And, I hope, especially all of, you young people who are doing a lot of work, because I see so many beautiful souls on Substack working on themselves. And I want you to know it doesn't end. And don't get upset about that. It's like, I remember when, I got offended, like, what? I've worked on this issue for 10 years. I should be over this. But it comes in waves. And right now, a big layer that I got called out on was by somebody I'm studying with. And she said, Ellen, how much time do you spend every day with your creator? Because she knows I'm a deep, not religious believer, but I have a deep faith with God. And I stopped and I was like, well, not very much. And she's like, Ellen, you're at a place where you're ready to trust God more. And I was like, inside, I'm like, no, I trust God, and then I really stepped away and had to think about it of like, do I? Do I? Can I surrender to God? Like, do I have that much trust? And my immediate answer was no. No. Because I think that trust comes in different sizes and shapes,
Yeah.
and what I'm noticing in my own work, and I'd be curious about you, is that yes, I trust to a certain degree, but to the degree where I can really surrender and let God do God's work, and I'll just be here as, do I have that level of trust? Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah. Well, it's been interesting. When you and I were talking on off camera earlier,
Yeah.
you'd asked me like, "How long have you been practicing?" And I'm like, "I graduated in '97, so we're 26 plus 3, so like almost 30 years that I've been a therapist." And I would say at the beginning, there was a lot of imposter syndrome. Like, I don't know
Oh,
what
yeah.
I'm doing. Why
Yeah.
is anyone paying money to come see me?
Yeah.
Just all of those
Yeah.
worries. And just also, I mean, grad school probably didn't do me the greatest service because we have to look at ethics and different approaches, but it all feels and looks so structured. And so there's like a right way to do it, the best way to do it. And so I for those early years, it was always about being so careful. Like, I don't want to take a wrong step. I don't want to harm anyone. Like, I don't want to not give them what they're paying for. And
Yeah.
at some point, a lot of personal work was happening, and it got to this place of, and it was actually a client that called me out on something, which
What?
I really, yeah. And it was, I mean, one of the things we had talked about is like, what if somebody is suicidal? Like,
Yeah.
how do you handle that? And
Yeah.
I'm not a crisis line. I'm not available 24. And so I had a client who was really struggling. And so I was trying to make an agreement with her because I really wanted to make sure she showed up at her next session. And she basically looked at me and said, "You know what, Heidi, I will say or do or sign whatever you want me to. I've done this before. Like, therapists have made me sign things before. I'll sign it. But if I don't want to be here, I'm not going to be here. You can't
Oh,
stop me."
no. No, you cannot.
And I was like, "What?" Right? Because yes, I can. I can, right? And
No.
I remember, like, I remember driving home and like driving my car and feeling this weird sense of, "Oh my gosh, my client is right. I cannot control this." And it was a moment that I needed because it just gave me this sense of, there are things in this world that I have no control over. Uh, and then it brought me to the other side of that question of, if I don't have control over that, what do I bring? What do I have control over? What can I do? And so it really shifted how I came into sessions with clients, because I started coming from this place of, I can't fix it. I can't
Yeah.
control it. I can't make anything happen for them. But what can I do? Well, I can bring my full self to the session. I can be fully present. I can love them and be passionate about the fact that I believe in them. Like, for some of them, sometimes people don't have a lot of people who believe in them. And because that's something that comes so naturally for me, I was like, what if I brought that into the session? And it radically changed how I felt about my work. And I feel like it also radically changed my work and just I think, I don't know if you saw, I posted a note this morning. I think you did. You commented on
Yes,
it.
I
A
did.
beautiful
Yes, I
comment.
did.
Yeah, just this realization that just because I had just reposted my, what if I don't have a niche post.
Right, right.
And then I was like, wait a minute, that's actually me as a therapist. Like people are always like, what's your specialty? And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I mean, like 95% of my clients are neurodivergent. I guess
Yeah.
that's a specialty, but really, I mean, we talk about lots of different things. And
Right,
so
right.
this morning I had this little moment of, oh, my therapeutic niche is me. And so, when I think about like trusting that it doesn't all depend on me. In fact, I don't have the power to make it all depend on me. And that's a
No.
really good thing. Yeah, I feel like that there was definitely a real kick to get me moving in that direction, and so that's been part of processing over the years, and it feels like that just keeps growing, like this, then coming to Substack and being like, I'm not a writer. I don't. I can't call myself a writer. I don't have a published book." And it's like,
Oh,
having this moment where I went, what makes a person a writer? I write. I Every writer is a little different. Some of my strengths are I'm good at grammar, I'm good at spelling. I like telling personal stories. So what about that doesn't make me a writer?
yeah.
And
And
it's like,
people
well,
read your writing.
and
That
people read
makes
my
you
writing, which
and
is
people
such a bonus. I
yeah.
love it when people read it. So yeah. And so like, wow, maybe I get to call myself a writer. Maybe I don't have to wait for like some big divine presence to say, Heidi, you're a writer. I
Right.
just be a writer. So, yeah.
Yes, yes. And, it's so interesting because I feel, especially with women, but men
Mhm.
also experience this, but I see a lot of women with the imposter syndrome
Mm.
that, well, who am I? And
Yeah.
yesterday I was taking a walk with a friend and she reflected it back to me. She's like, Ellen, because I'm talking about, the show that I'm doing for my upcoming launch of my first album. And she whipped her head around and she was like, girl, do you hear yourself? Just 2 years ago on the same walk, you were saying, oh, I don't know, could I? I've never written music. What do you think? Who am I? This is kind of crazy. And here we are. And I even have a record company who supports me. I mean, it's just
That's
like,
amazing.
it's crazy. It's crazy, amazing, and it's really a gift of the gods, like truly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting really looking at, whatever we decide truly that we are capable of doing, I believe that that is who we are. And yet we fight with these labels. I mean, I think we fight with these labels as much as people, fight with being, I don't know, labeled bipolar or autistic or,
Mhm.
whatever. And I think we're at a place in this time where I really want people to have permission to just be, like,
Yeah.
just be. And like, you get to be whoever you say you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's the gift for many people of coming to Substack right now.
Yeah.
It's like moving to a new town. You don't know anybody, or at least I didn't know anybody.
No.
And you get to decide how you're going to present yourself to the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, my big thing is like, show up as who you are. Don't be anybody except yourself. And yeah, there's such freedom. Like I spent a lot of my life feeling very much like I had to present a certain way and I could only present the polished stuff. And that has been a learning journey as well. Like, you know what? It's okay. Like, I mean, again, there's some wisdom that has to come into play because Substack isn't the place for me to do my therapy, but it is where I can share some of the learnings that I'm doing in my own life. And so I think there's wisdom in knowing, how do I share this piece and how much of it is appropriate to share, right? So, but I think, yeah, just being able to show up as who you are and believing that each and every one of us brings something wonderful and unique. And I truly believe that about humans. And that goes back to I think one of my gifts is that I really, really believe in every person, and I can always find something about a person. Does it mean that I think everything is fantastic? No, but there is, that I have a very deeply held belief in the basic dignity of every single person. And so just, sometimes what they've gone through doesn't maybe allow them to show some of the pieces that are beautiful, but it doesn't mean that they aren't there or that they weren't there to begin with before they were damaged really badly, right? So, yeah.
Yes. And I love this forum because I have found it to be the most, I mean, I've only been here like, I think now 12 weeks, but I have found it to be the most accepting platform that I've ever been on, the most generous, the
Mm,
most really authentic of all of the, I know they don't say their social media, but of all the social media
yeah.
platforms. And I so appreciate this, but for that, for
Yeah.
people really just showing up in their authenticity wherever they happen to be. And I so enjoy it. So
Yeah.
let me just see if anybody left any questions.
Haven't seen any, but I've
Good.
been kind of watching the
Oh,
comments. Yeah.
good. Oh, good, because I am not quick to that. So, are there any questions before we move on to the sound healing? Let's see. Paul says wisdom and polish. That is the quandary. That's interesting. I think wisdom can arrive at any moment, of course. And sometimes, for me at least, some of the greatest wisdom has been in the biggest messes of
Mm,
my life.
yeah. Well,
What do you
I think wisdom is one of those things that is hard earned,
think?
right? You don't
Yeah.
you don't gain wisdom from an easy life usually, unless you are someone who is very willing to learn and take influence from others, then I think you can. But I think you're right. A lot of times our wisdom it comes through the difficult experiences in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something that I think comes through the body, and the body isn't
Mm,
neat and polished. So for me, as I wiggle out through life, it's not neat. It's
mm,
very messy. At least my life. At least that's how it's been for me. So I have a question for you.
mm.
Is there anything that you would like me to focus on with the sound healing?
Nothing comes to mind. No.
Okay.
Yeah. This
You
is a
ever
first for me. So
Oh,
no,
I
this
was
is a
gonna say,
first.
have you
So yeah,
okay, good, 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 good.
I'm excited to experience it. So yeah.
Oh, oh, great. Okay, so if it's the first for you, it may be the first for other people. So let me take a moment to explain my version of sound healing. So the sound healing came to me many, many years ago at the beginning of my practice, that I didn't even want to do or be. But after many years of healing myself first, because I was deathly ill at age 26, by the time I healed, I was like, okay, now I'm ready to go back to work. What am I going to do? And before my illness, I had done high level sales. So I assumed that that would be what I would do. And at every single interview, all the symptoms came back. And I was like, all right, God, what do you want me to do? And without hesitation, God said, I want you to be a healer. I was like, yeah, no. But anyway, it's a long story. Eventually, I surrendered and agreed. And part of the healing that was taught to me is the sound healing. So basically, I am a channel for sound and for light language. So I will say a prayer and then the sound healing will begin. And this is great because I always like to give information so that I can just leave people in peace. So because you're receiving the sound healing, what we know is that sound works really well through water. It moves very well through water.
Mhm.
And since we're about at least 82%, the body is a beautiful vessel for sound. And sometimes our vessels aren't exactly polished. So if you will drink water more than you normally do, it will help the sound to work its way through you. So sometimes after people receive sound healing, they may feel more emotional than normal, and it's just fine. Just let it come through. Let, just if you feel tears, let the tears come. If you feel laughter, let the laughter come. Whatever wants to come through. Think of it as just energy finding an expression. And one day I'll do a whole thing on sound healing just by itself. So at the end, what I'd like to do is just let you all stay with that. And so what I'm going to do is thank you so much for being here today with us, with me. It's just been such a joy to just be in your presence. And I know this is just the first of many conversations. We don't live very far away from each other over
I
a border.
know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So for everyone on this now and for all of you on the replay, the sound will work exactly the same, even on a replay. It's quite mystical and amazing to me that it can work just as effectively. So without further ado, you can stay seated, you can keep your eyes open, you can close your eyes, you can lie down, whatever is most comfortable for you. And we will just begin. Here we go. Me hoy me hoy me me ma hoy ma hoy ma haya ma he ma oh Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, maha, oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, maha. Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, ma. 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 Oh yeah, Om. Om. And take a nice deep breath in and allow the sound just to move through you. And I just thank you for being here today. And again, Heidi, thank you so much. I send you all so much love. Bye now. Thank you.